talk to our speakers. So now for our last speaker. Dr. Zack Ritter received his PhD from UCLA in higher education, focusing on Asian international students' cross-racial interactions. He was most recently Dean of Diversity at Harvey Med, and prior to that, he was Assistant Director of Diversity at the University of Redlands. He has taught intergroup dialogue courses at UCLA and is currently a lecturer at UCLA, Redlands, and Laverne around issues of social justice. He has recently co-edited a book called Marginality in the Urban Center: The Costs and Challenges of Continued Whiteness in the Americas and Beyond. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Zack Ritter.
How's everybody doing? Wow, it's real. We're here. This is great. I feel like a comedian. I got my bench and the water and everything. It was great. So I want to be a little bit playful. Hey, what's up? Because it's a serious subject matter that I'm going to be dealing with, and it's about this institution, but about other institutions as well. And I want some audience. Hey, I want some audience participation as well, if we can do that. This is so cool to see familiar faces. Okay, so I'm Zack Ritter. That was a very beautiful introduction. It was too long for such a short guy, so that's okay. But so challenging status quo supremacy in higher education. Were people here for the Lion King one? Okay, cool, right? So I'm going to try to piggyback off of that because that one was all about stories and narrative telling. And a lot of my stuff is about narrative and storytelling, okay? So I want people to think about what's the story that we want to tell as an institution together, okay? I used to work here as in the Diversity Center, right, CDI, and I've been studying this stuff for a while, so I have some ideas of where we can go, both Redlands, but also the larger we of, I don't know, American small liberal arts or something like that. All right. Okay, I told you there's stories, right? So does anyone know Plato's allegory of the cave? Uh-oh. Okay, don't tell anybody. Okay, don't tell the other people. So Plato's allegory of the cave is in the Republic, right? Socrates never wrote anything down, so Plato wrote all it down. And people are in the bottom part, and they're shackled, okay? And that's all they've known their whole life. See, they see the shadows, and that's the only world that they know. So that's their truth. Mao Zedong, not the coolest guy, but he had a great saying that there's three truths. There's my truth, your truth, and the truth. Okay? So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through the thing. So these folks have a truth down there. Someone gets free of their chains and comes up. See? They come up and they see the sunlight, and then they see the sun for the first time, and they see the birds and the bees and the trees for the first time in their life. They've been enslaved their whole life. And they have this new truth. And if it was you, what would you do? Would you go back down? No? Okay. This is a tough audience. The person's nice, and they go back down, and they say, hey, there's this other world up there. You should come check it out. It's amazing. What do the people down there say? Right. I'm comfortable here. Right. And almost you might even be crazy, like you're out of your mind. That's not a thing. So this person says, well, I'm going to go on my merry way and just live my life. Okay? And then they live another truth, right? They have their own truth. So again, my truth, your truth, the truth. Okay? And these are narratives and stories that can also be told in symbols, right? So we tell stories through symbols, and when you see some of these symbols, what's the stories that you think of? Are they they're cool cars, right? These are fancy cars that we want to aspire to purchase, right? So BMW stands for Bavarian Motor Works, right? Bavaria is a place in Germany. That's where my father was born, and he was born in a refugee camp after World War II, and his parents were in Auschwitz and the concentration camps. Family's Jewish, and a lot of people were killed. I didn't really know what a cousin was growing up because we didn't have those. So when I see this, I'm like, ooh, that signals something not so good to me, right? Because, oh, this was complicit in the killing of my family, because BMW, the reason why it's like this is because it's a propeller. It's the sky, right? The clouds in the sky. They made airplanes for the Nazis and tanks for the Nazis. Same thing with Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes was Mr. Benz's daughter, and it's again a propeller, because they made the airplanes, but they also made the gas for the gas chambers. Right? It's pretty messed up stuff. And then Volkswagen was made in 1935 for Hitler's birthday, and it's the Nazi Volkswagen, because the V is a F in German, Volk, Nazi Volkswagen. So again, we all have different truths when we look at these images, right? My truth, your truth, the truth. And it's always tricky, like, what is the truth, right? Because, to be fair, Mercedes-Benz, like, tried to make good on history, and I guess they pay for a lot of the buses in, like, Israel, and, like, the taxis, and they gave back in some ways, right? So, I don't know. Okay, more stories. I told you, we're going to tell a lot of stories here. So, does anyone know who this is? No? Okay, good. That's why I'm here. Excellent. So this is the March on Washington, right? 1963. This is the dude who came out before Dr. Martin Luther King. Okay? And these are the stories that I heard growing up that got me kind of interested in this stuff about race, class, and gender, and how to, I don't know, we say like tikkun olam, to repair the world, right? Jewish culture. So this is Rabbi Prince. Okay, Rabbi Prince was the chief rabbi of Berlin. And then the Nazis came and he had to get out. And he worked closely with Dr. Martin Luther King. And he gave this speech on the March on Washington. And he said, basically, silence is violence. Right? If we don't look out for each other, I'm going to be next, you're going to be next. And I can't be who I'm supposed to be until you are who you're supposed to be. Right? That kind of Ubuntu notion. So these are the messages that I received growing up, you know, from my grandmother, from my father, from my mother, that this is serious. You got to do something important with your life. And even, you know, quick side note, do you know the guy behind him? Also very overlooked in history, Bayard Rustin organized the March on Washington, but he was also gay. And many historians feel as though he was written out of history because he was gay. Okay, so all these stories that I'm sharing with you, and you have your own stories as well, come together to create a dominant narrative at an institution, right? Because we're all here together talking to each other. And this is called the campus climate. Okay? All the different stories come together to make this campus climate, and you have the historical legacy of the institution, the composition, which means like statistics and numbers of demographics at the institution, and then you have the behavioral dimension, psychological. We don't have to go into all of this, but understand that it all comes together into a complicated soup of students' desires, faculty desires, administrator desires, so on and so forth. Right? It's like running a little city. Hey, what's up? Right? Okay. Well, my students are here. This is fantastic. This is great. Feel at home. Okay. So the main story that I'm trying to tell today is, I guess this one. That there's a disconnect between the students that many institutions are admitting and the desires that they have, and then the desires of folks that are running the institution. Right? There's not only a racial divide, there's an age divide, oftentimes there's a gender divide, there's also a class divide. It's, again, that whole complicated soup of the campus climate. So this is the racial breakdown, it says ethnic, of University of Redlands. So it's predominantly white institution. As we say PWI, predominantly white institution, right? But in the last, 5 to 10 years, there's been a push in higher education to admit more students of color, more LGBT students, so on and so forth. And so, right, almost like 30% Latinx, 6% Asian American, still pretty low with black folks, and that needs to change. So compare this to the folks that run the institution, boom, okay? So, and this is not a diss to the University of Redlands. You can do this with any small liberal arts or large public institution, and the Board of Trustees and the regents will 9 times out of 10 look like this, okay? Now, not to say these folks are super out of touch and they don't care and they don't know, but we haven't created apparatuses for people to talk to each other holistically and understand, who are you? What is your story? Here's my story. Oh, I didn't know that you wanted to see this on campus, this on campus. And then when those things don't happen, the desires bubble up and become demands. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so these are the Board of Trustees at University of Redlands, and I worked here for some time. I didn't even know that these 36 individuals in the bylaws of the institution run the institution, but they delegate it to the president of the institution to run the day-to-day stuff for them. And they set all the budget, all the money matters of the institution. How many people in this room have talked to some of the Board of Trustees before? Okay, a couple. Good. All right. Was it a good experience? Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry that happened, but we'll get to ways of maybe how it could be better, right, or something. Okay. So again, when institutions don't listen to students' desires, they become demands. I put this website, well, this is Mizzou, and we all know about Mizzou, right? University of Missouri, big incidents, 2015, right? And it culminated in a hunger strike by Jonathan Butler, and then the football team said, we're not going to play until you reach the demands. So the demands are met. And the institution was going to lose like $1 million, something like that. And then the institution was like, okay, we'll deliver on your demands, because it dealt with the wallet, right? We're going to lose money, and so we're going to act on this. But here's something very interesting. I mean, that's interesting enough. The demands.org. Has anyone heard of that? Okay, cool. All right, we're learning stuff. So the demands.org, yes. They kind of say the same 6 things throughout all the schools that have their list of demands. Okay? Let's see if I can remember them. Culturally relevant curriculum, culturally relevant pedagogy, more money for the diversity center, mandatory diversity training, and there's 2 others that you all will look up at home today. And more student, staff, and faculty of color on the campus, and, ooh, dang, look at me, and more mental health services provided by folks of color, okay? So it's not just a Redlands thing, right? It's not just pick your whatever university thing. It's happening across the country, so people need to come together and figure out, how can we make this work better? Okay. Now, it's difficult to deliver on those 6 demands in a way that, how do I put this? For the folks running the show, it's difficult for them oftentimes to understand how best to deliver on these 6 demands, because